Welcome to MgoBucks. It is game week, best week of the year. We're going to be putting out a video every day up until the game starts on Saturday. So please be sure to subscribe, like the video so that you can get pinged whenever we put out a new one. Matt, what is up? Are you as excited as I am?
I don't know. Is there a big game this week?
This Saturday, yes. Yes, there is. I believe there's preseason basketball.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting excited for basketball season. But I guess maybe we should first go over what happened this last weekend.
I don't want to.
Our games were a little scary with the injury bug biting both teams, which we were a little worried about after our last video. And unfortunately, we jinxed ourselves.
We totally jinxed ourselves.
We're not going to probably know until about 5 minutes before the game starts what the actual injury situation is. Obviously the biggest one, Blake Corum hurt his knee and was able to come back for one carry after that, and we don't know. There's no structural damage, but we don't know if he's gonna be able to play at all. I mean,
I'm glad you're doing your homework on Michigan. You're right. That's exactly what they said. No structural damage. That's like the scariest thing.
What about Edwards though? Is he going to be
Edwards? He didn't suit up. He's got some sort of a hand problem, and I don't know if it's super serious or not. So I guess we'll just have to see.
Because, I mean, looking at your third string running back, it was a complete nightmare without Edwards and Corum. And I think as long as you have one of those two guys playing, I think you'll be fine. But if you don't have them both, our fifth or sixth string running back is pretty solid.
Yeah. And you know what? I know that Illinois has like a good defense, but and by rankings, I mean they're like they're tops of the Big Ten in defense, but they've still got Illinois talent. We should be able to, and I know that's kind of unfair because they're probably better than what I know they've got an excuse me. I know they've got an NFL corner out there that was making plays left and right. But
yeah, I heard that a couple of their guys in their secondary were out for the game though, so I'm not sure which NFL guys were there.
Oh, I can't remember the dude's name. He was everywhere though. I can't remember. I wish I could remember the Illinois guy's name because he deserves his name to be stated. But he was really good. He was there making plays in the pass game. He was stopping guys like in the run game. I mean, I was really impressed with that dude. I'm not just saying that because I'm talking up the other team that played really good when I thought that we should have won. We were honestly, Blake Corum had 108 yards rushing in the first half and 42 yards receiving, 40 plus yards receiving. That was in the first half. We were like on our way to a 31-14 win, a very unscary. I mean, they couldn't stop Blake Corum. He was running all over them. So that's probably what was going to happen if Corum hadn't gone out. But man, it's just devastating because that's Michigan's whole offense. Blake Corum is Michigan's whole offense. And I mean, honestly, I'm trying to think of a parallel for Ohio State. Excuse me. But the only one I could think of is maybe CJ Stroud got hurt, had to leave the game, and your backup quarterback had to come in. I mean, that's the whole offense. Ryan Day is passed first.
Yeah.
And my gosh, I know it is pretty devastating to lose both your running backs. I'm not de-emphasizing that at all. But you guys can get past that. That's not your first line of offense.
Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, like Stroud hasn't been bad the last few weeks, but he's still been good, just not the elite level player he was sort of before. So I'm just trying to figure out what exactly is causing some of the issues. I think it's sort of a combination of a lot of things. Like when it gets colder, I think it is harder to throw. Like if you look at some of the big games this last week, there were, the USC game and the South Carolina-Tennessee game, which, they're still playing good weather, so they're able to throw it all around. Where all these other teams, you look, all the scores are really low on all these places where the weather is cold for the most part. You have your, Penn State playing Rutgers. Rutgers is so bad, I guess it doesn't matter. But, I think weather is part of it. And then I think the other issue with us anyway was our offensive line has been getting dinged up the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, how many
You know,
guys on your
Joe.
offensive line were out? Did you guys were they
So
just dinged up?
yeah, so our right tackle was out last week, but he came back this week. But he was, he's not 100%. And then
DeJuan
our right,
Jones, or is he
yeah, and
playing
then
left?
yeah, it was him. And then I think our right guard has been nursing some lower leg injuries also. I think ankle or something over the last 5 weeks or something. He's able to play through it, but it hasn't been ideal. And ever since his injuries have been, maybe it's like since the Iowa game, I think. And ever since then, that's really hurt the line, but he was still better than the replacement. And then he ended up getting hurt towards the end of our game. Like at the very end of the game, he was in the medical tent and, on crutches after that. So I don't know what his status is.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have, a couple guys that are pretty decent backups. Obviously they won't be as good as a starter, but at least it's not like a complete disaster. But, that's why going back to some of those earlier games where Stroud was really tearing it up. He really, like, our run blocking was good, but not amazing. And our pass protection has always been completely unbelievable until like those injuries started happening. And since the pass protection has broken down a little bit, the passing game has really slowed down to being just sort of like very good, but not the amazing level that it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think your pass blocking is fantastic. I mean, I was watching the Maryland game, and it just really did. It still seems like Stroud has forever back there to throw.
No, he generally does.
He
It was
really does.
even better. It used to be.
It was
It
even
was like
better.
it used to be like 10 seconds. It was crazy.
Yeah,
And now he's only getting like 4 or 5 seconds, which is still way more than you need.
right.
I was counting when Talia was throwing, and he was, some of the plays he was actually getting time to throw, but a lot of the time he was still doing it under 3 seconds. And most teams are not going to get to the quarterback if you get it out of there in under 3. So.
Very true.
And so, I mean, listening to a lot of different podcasts and Buckeye beat reporters, it seems like everyone is very concerned about the corners. It's sort of like the only real weakness on our team. And, when Cam Brown is healthy, he's not like a true ace, but he's, I would say, maybe an A- player or B+ player. So he's very solid. But then the other 2 corners are not. Like, we've just been rotating with like 4 or 5 different guys trying to find a number 2 and a number 3. Burke has been hit or miss, and then the other, freshmen and sophomores have been playing have been, very average. And they got tested finally, and it's a combination of, I think a lot of people were saying, well, Ohio State was overlooking Maryland. I think it didn't seem like after they scored quickly against Maryland on the first drive, they sort of didn't keep up the intensity after that. That was maybe part of the problem, but the other part is, our team works so much better when we have, the balanced attack where everyone knows that our passing game is elite. But when the reason that works is people are so afraid of Mayan Williams or Travian Henderson making big running plays that they have to respect that, and that really is one of the things that opens up the passing game, because the Big Ten, even though our team is more of a pass-heavy team, the defenses are still built to try to stop the run first. And when they don't need to worry about that as much, in the first half, Travian Henderson was just, you could tell, I don't know how much of it is, obviously he's been injured and missed a ton of time in the last 6 weeks and really a lot of this year, but he, you don't know how much of it's a sophomore slump or his vision is bad, but he is, you look at him, he was getting like 1.5 yards a carry the whole first half. And then the second half, we bring in a freshman and he gets 135 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I'm wondering, well, what took Day and Tony Alford that long to make the switch? Like, it shouldn't take an entire half of seeing your running back getting stuff for no yards the entire half.
Well, you know what? They actually made the call, I don't think they actually made the call. I take that back, because you were at the game, right?
Yeah.
So you probably didn't see Travion, unless you rewatched it already. You probably didn't see Travion Henderson in the walking boot on the sideline. Yeah, they didn't make that call. They had to do that because Mayan Williams wasn't even available, right? I don't even know what his status is. I think, but Hayden did great. I mean,
Yeah.
they had to play him because Travion Henderson was in that walking boot, but Hayden did fantastic. And I know it is the Maryland defense, that you take that a little with a grain of salt, but I mean, still freshmen to come into that situation on the road and perform like that, man, that's pretty impressive. And it's a little scary because I was kind of like one of the like the little things that was making me feel better, letting me fall asleep at night was that Ohio State had 2 banged up running backs. So maybe what we could do Michigan wise defensively is kind of do what they did last year, rush 4 and just let the rest of the team cover and see if we can still get some pressure. Now, granted, we don't have David Ajabo back there. We don't have Aiden Hutchinson back there, like superstars. But my gosh, even our defensive line, our best defensive lineman, defensive end, Morris was out. It's just insane. I think we're getting him back, though, for the Buckeye game. But, I mean, that's kind of like the way we figured out how to play Ohio State. And Ohio State still scored 27 points in that game and 400 yards passing. Like, that's figuring it out, right? I mean, against Ohio State, if you win, I guess. But we
didn't have the red zone offense going in that game too. That was the other big difference in the game. Other than having no defense, the red zone was really bad.
Yeah, and you know what? Both Michigan and Ohio State, I don't think have cured those ills, honestly. I think there's still some lingering effects from last year, no matter what improvement we've seen.
I don't know. Hayden looked pretty good when he got near the goal line. He got 3 touchdowns, so he looked ridiculous.
Well,
again, hard to know against Maryland, but I mean, the guy was just he was just not getting tackled for loss because it seemed like Travion Henderson, he just dances around too much, trying to figure out what he wants to do. And Mayan Williams, he sometimes with him, I think sometimes it's the play design is wrong, where they try to get him to go wide when he needs to be going up the middle, and that's what he did against Indiana and did such a good job. But
Travion doesn't seem like a between the tackles type of runner. He's more of like get him on the outside, and if you figure that out, he doesn't have very many moves after that, unless he gets an open space and on screens. Obviously,
but they need to be giving him screens more. Like I would say, I don't know how bad his injury was. I just think that they were just wanting to rest him up and not. I mean, obviously he wasn't 100% still. They said he had a great week of practice. I don't know. But the funny thing is he's not Dallin Hayden is not the number 3 back. He's like the number 6 back. We had a couple guys that were ahead of him in the preseason.
That's right. Who was they were injured? We didn't even see him. He played in the spring.
Yeah, there was a couple people in the spring game that were really good that got hurt and they're out for the year. So it's just a ridiculous amount of people. I mean, our lineup now, I think we're down to Chip Trainum, who is like a transfer from Arizona or something, Arizona State. And then we have like a converted safety maybe like after that. Like, I don't know. I don't think we have anyone left.
Hey, one question. We did see, and you may not have seen this either, CJ Stroud was limping there towards the end of the game. So have we heard anything on him? Is he just like, is it just like something small?
They think it was like from what I've heard from people have thought that it was just like got a bruise in his leg or something. But if there was any problem, we wouldn't know. We're not going to hear about that.
True. That's true. They're not, even with Blake Corum, they're being squeamish about it. Like they're not saying anything for sure. They're choosing their words carefully. It's interesting with Corum because he looked like, I don't know if you saw that play where he got knocked out. It looked like he was out. It was almost like I feel bad for the guy because I was like his career, didn't think his career was over, but I figured his year was over for sure. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I was panic mode and thinking,
was it like a McGahee hit?
It was nasty. It's I don't know if they've said it specifically, but it really looked like a hyperextended knee.
Okay.
Nothing actually hit him. He just hyperextended his knee. They said the structure's okay, like you said. Had some discomfort. The dude came back and played and got a 6-yard gain. in the second half. But then I guess he said, hey, this hurts. And I'm sure Harbaugh thought, we need him insanely. We need him to win this game. But he probably was willing to drop a game to Illinois because it doesn't matter to the East. And you don't want to lose Corum. I mean, and it wouldn't be fair to him to play him when he's hurt.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Let's talk about Michigan first. What did you think the biggest positives of the day were for Michigan?
The biggest positives from the weekend?
Yeah.
So we're looking this on we're trying to take a sunny side look at this. Honestly, I think the positive, if you look at it, is number one, they won the game, right?
Yeah.
And number two, they had a bunch of injuries. Their two best running backs were out. J.J. McCarthy was in a terrible situation against a good defense, and they were behind. Granted, the refs did help them. I think the pass interference call was a good call, but the refs, that definitely helped them. He made some terrible throws in that game. The receivers proved to be terrible, and I don't know if it's almost like every time either the quarterback made a good play, the receiver didn't, and vice versa. And that's what was happening. And so I think the best thing we can really look at to come out of that is they won, and they won gritty, and they won ugly. Excuse me. They won ugly. And I think that, might pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, I would say, like, for me watching it, I was for the positives. I mean, obviously winning. The fact that Corum didn't break any bones.
Yeah,
that's a good thing. So he could potentially be back for this game, and if not, if you guys can somehow make it in the playoffs, win or lose, really. I mean, what if you guys lose and still keep it respectable, and he doesn't play? Then people would be like even more likely to potentially move you into 4. Because I mean, there's been a lot of close games and losses over this last weekend, and I think there's something to be said for just winning and moving on. Like, it's so hard towards the end of the year. I mean, there's a reason why. Like, people say, oh, well, you had a weak schedule, this or that. Well, there's a reason why. Plenty of other teams have bad schedules too, but they're not undefeated. Like, it is really hard to go undefeated in football. I mean, even a lot of the national title teams. I mean, Georgia won the title last year. They weren't undefeated. I mean, it's really hard to do, no matter how good your team is. You can have a team full of NFL stars, and you're still probably going to lose a game because it's almost impossible. And so winning obviously was huge. And I thought I was in a Maryland bar with probably 98% Buckeye fans, and everyone I was talking to was rooting for Michigan to win, and I was pretty conflicted because I never root for Michigan to win, even though I know this would be a bigger game and it would mean more and there's more hype when we're both undefeated, and that's pretty fun. Like, I just get so much enjoyment when your team loses, so I can't bring myself to root for you guys to win. So I didn't think, I was like, just watching your backup running back, he was just getting nothing, and I was like, there is no way
third string
JJ is going to be able to take this team on his back and get a win without good receivers and without any kind of running game. And like, they've never been losing, I think, this whole season. So this is the first time they've had to play from behind. And, that showed a lot of grit that he was able to do that all on his own for the most part.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I like that. And JJ, he missed some passes. There was, do you remember seeing the play where the tight end was wide open going to the end zone? He did a crossing route, just got lost in traffic, popped out the other side, wide open, and JJ threw a like Joe Milton style pass. I don't know if you remember him from 2020, Michigan's quarterback. I mean, who's the guy? Joe Theismann, was it?
Yeah.
Like, he would hurl the ball into the fourth row. He just had no touch. Like,
we call it Bowserman, but we call him Heiserman because he had
that's actually how I know him.
His first 3 games of the year that year, he was on fire, and everyone thought he was going to be amazing because I was hyping him up so much.
I remember that. I know him as Heiserman, but that was that type of pass. I mean, it was inexplicable, but yeah, I mean, JJ came out on top in it. I mean, he was he led them to a win. So I guess you can say that's a positive. It's not going to work out that way next week or this week in 5 days. 6 days?
So what are the biggest negatives for you other than injuries?
The biggest negative for me is that all this year I was telling myself that Michigan was holding back on their pass game just because they were wanting to save all of those awesome pass plays for Ohio State. They were just keeping it like in their back pocket for Ohio State, and they were not going to let that out of the bag. But that is 100% not true. I knew it wasn't true when I was thinking it, but they just are not very good right now. Like Cade McNamara had a better downfield passing game than J.J. McCarthy. I mean, J.J. makes a lot better throws everywhere else, obviously. He makes throws that McNamara can't make. But down the field, like Cade McNamara completed 2 deep passes against the Buckeyes last year, 2 of them. And you need to do that to open things up. I mean, that was kind of the game of destiny, I guess, for Michigan last year. It was a shock. But Michigan's not going to come in with any of those intangible, properties this time. So I just don't know. That was the biggest negative for me. It is just the realization that passing game, if, the running backs get dinged up or stopped, or maybe they play, but they're just not at full force and the Buckeyes just stomp it down. How the heck is Michigan going to come back and win that game? Like, there's no way. Like Ohio State's going to eat their lunch. That was the biggest negative for me.
Yeah. I guess so. For me, on positives, finding a way to win, obviously, and keeping the double-digit win streak alive. I was pretty excited about that. That was a happy accident at the end where we got that fumble. We had Zach Harrison just like JTT came up to Zach and he's like, what do I need to do on this play? He's like, well, if you get a sack here, this game is over. And he's like, okay. And he goes and gets a sack, and then he gets a sack and a forced fumble the next play right after that. And it just popped up and he got a touchdown. So it was just unbelievable for the ending. I was pretty nervous then because, we were only up 6. Mm-hmm. They had the ball. I mean, granted, they had like 36 seconds or something because they stupidly tried to return the kick instead of letting it go in the end zone and wasted like another 10 seconds. That was dumb.
Yeah. Oh, so dumb.
That was really dumb. I mean, anyway, because they've been passing all day.
I wanted to say, like that. Speaking of that play that you just talked about, like Tulia is that how you pronounce it? Talia. He is he's a good quarterback, but when he screws up, it's like in fantastic fashion. It's in spectacular fashion. Just like him getting sacked, the ball pops up and right into the linebacker's hands, and he trots into the end zone. It was just like it was the hilarious.
Was that his fault, or was that? I mean, he was getting ready to throw, and his left tackle just completely screwed up there. I mean,
yeah, it probably wasn't
his fault, or is the line's fault?
It's just when it happens to him, it's usually in spectacular fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen other games. Like I saw a Maryland-Iowa game last year at the stadium, and Iowa picked him off like 3 times that game. And it was just awful. Like those were legit. I mean, granted, Iowa had a really good pass defense, especially last year, and he did not look good at all in that game. And in this game, it's just that's why one of the things is so if you don't have all the injury updates from every player on every team, that's why it would be so hard to do gambling because. You look at, they lost to Wisconsin 2 weeks ago, got beat down, and then last week they got shut out 30-0 against Penn State.
Yeah.
Penn State's been really hot, but apparently they had a freshman center who had been playing the last 2 weeks, and that's why their offense had been terrible. And now they got their starter back, and so their offensive line was fixed. And then Talia was also hurt the last few weeks, and now he's closer to 100%. And you could tell, I thought. Until that last play, I thought he outplayed Stroud considerably. I mean, he was making ridiculous plays. Like he had this one play where he was just, he avoided a sack, and then he was running to the sideline. I thought it was a great play just to I thought he was throwing it away, and instead of throwing it away, it's like a freaking touchdown. I mean, it's just unbelievable play that he made, and I mean, I was just super impressed with his play, and then even a lot of his receivers that have been dinged up, like Demas had been their star receiver last year. He got hurt at the game that I was watching and against Iowa, and he hasn't been the same since he came back from that injury, and he actually made some plays. And then, of course, Raheem Jarrett, I think, is the other receiver. He was making all sorts of plays.
He's good.
Granted, our our 2 and 3 corners were pretty weak in this game. So that's, the funny thing though is like the only real matchup problem offensively that we could go against if we make the playoffs is going against USC. I think no one else really has an offensive attack that would really be able to go against our weaknesses. Whereas,
well, now that Tennessee is out.
Yeah, exactly. So USC is the only one left, I think, that would potentially, they would definitely be a problem. I think game would probably be a shootout.
So I interrupted you. You were talking about the positives. Obviously, Buckeyes won.
Yeah, the other positives were, I don't think there were any major injuries. I don't think Henderson had a major injury. I don't think our right guard potentially just re-aggravated an injury. I don't know if it's bad enough that he's going to be out. And even if he is, we still have good backup linemen, so it's not like a complete disaster. From what I'm hearing, Mayan Williams is going to be back, and I think between Mayan and Hayden, I think we're in good shape. I'm very happy with the depth at running back this year because we've needed every single one of them, which has been crazy. I mean, there's only been like a handful of games where Mayan and Travion both played the whole game. I mean, it just hasn't happened all year. And, unfortunately, it doesn't look like JSN is going to be back until the playoffs, if at all. So,
I was going to ask about him. I've been thinking about the dude, and I haven't heard anything. So, but if he was coming back anytime soon, we would have heard about that.
Yeah,
unless they're going to be probably surprise on.
I mean, the good thing about the playoffs is it's a long ways away. So he would have like a good month and a half or something to heal up. So that's plenty of time if it's even possible for him to heal up this year. So that's a long ways out. And I think it is good to, for instance, like last year we played Michigan State right before we played you guys, and I was like, it's rough having a top 10 or top 12 team right before we played Michigan. And we smoked them, and I think we came in a little overconfident, as a lot of people had predicted. And whereas this game, it's like, look, you have to bring it every week, or you're not going to win the game. And they're definitely not going to be overconfident after the game that they had against Maryland. So that's a good thing. I would prefer to have comfortable wins, but that's definitely the silver lining in a less than spectacular win is the fact that they're not going to be overconfident this week. And
nobody's going to be overconfident.
Yeah, the other thing about injuries, like people heal up very quickly when it's the game week. Everyone is anyone who's had nagging injuries is going to be playing. They're going to be getting their shots, whatever they need. They're going to be finding a way to get in the game.
Yeah, we'll find out more as the week goes on.
Yeah,
I fully expect for him to be there.
As for the negatives for Ohio State, it's clearly not having a number 2 and 3 corner that have been reliable. That's by far the biggest issue for us. Just not having that corner depth. That's, it's weird because like that's been like the strength of our team for so many years, having good corners. And the last couple of years, it's just been a nightmare.
Yeah, and you know what? That kind of that matches up well with Michigan because we can't pass.
Yeah.
And if your corners aren't doing great, we're probably going to make them look good because our guys can't catch. They're not getting open, miscommunications with the quarterback. So.
And the one thing that does make it a little bit better too is like our safeties are really good. So even though our number 2 and 3 corners aren't good, our safeties are really good, and our number 1 corner is pretty good.
Lathan Ransom, dude, I knew he was going to be good because of his last name.
He had blocked punts 2 weeks in a row. He's blocked punts, and he broke his thumb or something on one of the first plays of the game. And ended up, having to have a cast on, and then he still ended up blocking that punt. and then I think apparently our linebacker Eichenberg has 2 broken hands. He's playing with.
What?
Yeah, he has 2 broken hands. He's been. I don't know when that happened, but one of our players said after the game that he's been playing with 2 broken hands.
You would think that would
And
affect tackling
yeah,
ability.
and he has over 100 tackles and like 12 or 13 tackles for loss. Like he's having an All-American season with those injuries. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let's talk about the landscape a little bit. So obviously, one of my wishes came true, and Tennessee lost because I am. And now, after this weekend, I'm expecting Michigan to lose. I was feeling very confident earlier this year, a few weeks ago, especially after that Penn State game Michigan played. We're going to need some help to get into the playoffs. Granted, depending on if we lose and how we lose, whether I think that I would actually want to see Michigan in the playoffs after that is another story. But one of my wishes came true. USC didn't lose. I wanted USC to lose, and I don't think they're going to.
Well, you know
What
who
do you
they
think
play
about
this weekend, right?
What's that?
You know who they play this weekend, right?
Utah, right?
No, Notre Dame. Utah is the
Oh,
only team
yeah,
that beat
that's
them
right.
already. So Utah beat them earlier, but they're playing Notre Dame. So that actually might be an interesting game because Notre Dame has been improving quite a bit, and they do have a really good defense. So it'll be interesting to see how USC does against them.
I hate when I have to pull for Notre Dame. I mean, that's like the worst.
Yeah,
it's the worst
it
feeling ever.
makes me feel icky.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? USC, I watched that game last night against UCLA. UCLA had a chance, but man, USC looks good. Their receivers look good.
You got to caveat that their defense was trash.
There was no defense in that game. You can't.
I mean, they did get 3 turnovers though, so that they made some big plays in the secondary, but man, they gave up a lot of yards and a lot.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it was just a lot of yards overall. So, yeah,
I actually wouldn't mind
really
playing them because I don't mind playing teams with bad defenses. No,
yeah.
I'm a little bit worried, like I said, because they do have such good offensive firepower. But I think they lost their starting running back Dye a week ago, so I don't know, how much that's going to hurt them going forward.
Yeah, it didn't hurt them at all in this game. That backup dude.
Well, I mean, against the real defense, I think that you're going to need to be able to have a balanced attack.
And UCLA
UCLA
was supposed to have a decent defense. They really were. And who did USC lose to? It was Utah, I believe. And they played.
USC lost to Utah. UCLA's lost a couple times recently.
Yeah, they lost a couple times.
I'm not sure.
But I'm going to have to look this up. Who is USC going to play in their championship game? I'd have to figure that out because I need to know who to pull for.
Well, I don't think we need to worry about that just yet. But right now, I'm just rooting for Notre Dame. That'll help our strength of schedule and, knock off another contender. But who is that going to put back in? So let's assume we have the winner of our game, and then we have Georgia. Assume the other interesting thing would be what would happen if LSU beats Georgia. Georgia's had some close games. They had a close game against Missouri, a close game against Kent State, and now another close game against Kentucky. These are not good teams. That's 3 close games against bad opponents, right?
Now, they seem to play really well when it's a big team.
Yeah, that. It's hard to. Yeah, so it's hard to. It sort of reminds me a little bit of everyone talks about how the 2019 LSU team was maybe one of the best teams ever, and I was saying they did have a relatively average defense that year, and we're giving up some points and yards, and then they also had some close games against some teams that weren't as good, but then again, in the big games they got it done obviously, and it ended up not being an issue, but. It kind of reminds me of Georgia. They do seem to be playing down a lot to their competition. So I don't know if that's really relevant for a playoff game because they'll have time to prepare. They're not going to have to worry about, playing down. That's why it's hard to judge a team. Is it just playing down? They played down 3 times against really bad teams. I mean, these were not decent teams they're having close games with.
Happens to us too. I mean, our teams play down to competition too.
Yeah. But, for everyone putting them and ranking them as the clear number 1, I don't think it's quite as clear as everyone is sort of making it out to be. Considering,
well, yeah,
and so
because they got that from beating Tennessee.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, so Georgia, everyone just assumes that every team in the SEC is good because they play. They play some teams in the SEC, and I think that people aren't realizing. Well, they're not playing everyone. They didn't play Bama, so. they're not playing all the top competition in the SEC this year, and the rest of their schedule has also been garbage. So, what is Georgia has beaten a Tennessee team that also happened to lose this weekend. So,
yeah. So let's go back to your initial thought. So number one, let's assume it's Georgia, because I don't think they're going to lose. I don't think they're going to lose to LSU.
Yeah.
Then number two would be the winner of our game, which let's say it's Ohio State. No, let's say it's Michigan. Number three would be either USC or
TCU is ranked ahead of them. Do you think that they're going to get jumped?
TCU or the Pac-12 winner.
I don't think TCU is going to get jumped if they're undefeated.
No, if they're undefeated, no, that's true.
So let's assume they're undefeated for this scenario. Then the fourth spot's going to probably be. I think if USC wins out, I think they're going to go no matter what.
It's their path. So Michigan or Ohio State, if we lose this game coming up, we would need for USC or for TCU to lose.
Yeah. Yep.
At least one game. And then I think there'd be two Big Ten teams in there. Because they can't put two SEC teams in there now. They all have two losses, except for Georgia.
If it were up to you, would you prefer to play Ohio State twice this year?
No. In the playoffs, depends. See, the thing is, if Michigan let's say Ohio State wins.
Do you understand the bragging rights of winning twice in one year?
It's hard to beat a team twice, though.
I know.
It's hard.
I know, but do you know how amazing that would be for your season?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But so if it was if it was Georgia, Ohio State, TCU or USC, whichever, and then Michigan, let's say Michigan got in, and it happened. Like Michigan would have to play Georgia. Like I don't think Ohio State or Michigan's beating Georgia right now, to be honest. I just think they're playing too good. We've got too many questions and injuries and weird little things happening. I don't want to play Georgia. Do you?
Yeah, right now I wouldn't, but after a month and a half of healing, I think I would be okay with that matchup because I don't think that they would be able to handle our offense when it's fully functional and everyone's healed up. And it's in the good weather, in a dome.
Maybe.
On a fast track. So I think, that's a matchup that I would with time to heal up, I'm not concerned about anyone really.
Interesting. Yeah, I would be concerned about Michigan playing these high-powered offenses.
Yeah. So USC is still probably the biggest concern out of everyone, just because I think they might be able to exploit our only real defensive weakness the best. I don't think anyone else can.
Yeah, I think if that was going to happen, I think USC would be number 3, and Ohio State would play USC. It should be an awesome game.
Yeah.
2 future Big Ten teams. I mean, that would be 1 future Big Ten team and 2 Big Ten teams. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be good for the conference. So we kind of should be pulling for them then, right? We want everyone in the conference to be doing well.
As long as TCU loses, we have to get TCU to lose. They almost did.
I don't know how they've had like four comeback wins this year already, and really close ones too.
I know,
but they remind me a lot of Ohio State from 2002, having all those close wins.
Yeah, I think you and I went to the Cincinnati game that year.
Yeah,
and they almost lost to Cincinnati in the first game of the year.
Cincinnati, we had an overtime win against Illinois. We had that Hail Mary against Purdue. I mean, it was crazy that whole season.
Yep, it really was. But yeah, it's going to be difficult unless you have a high-powered offense. It's really difficult to win unless you're Georgia. I mean, they don't have a high-powered offense in Georgia, but it's high-powered enough. Michigan has glaring passing problems. There's just no way. I don't think that they have the players to really do it.
Well, I think as long as you are able to not get down early, I think you'll be able to play with anyone, right? So you just don't have the team that you can't go down 14-0 right off the bat or 21-0 right off the bat. As long as you stay in it, then you can keep running, and then you should be okay. It's just you can't be playing from behind.
You can't rely on that though. Like, we're never going to be able to get behind
Yeah,
ever.
no, that's why I'm saying it's not ideal, but it makes it so
behind.
you still have a chance because
We got behind by a touchdown against Illinois, and we scratched our way back. But that was Illinois, and Michigan was at home.
Yeah, that was tough for a home game.
Yeah, I mean, we lost a lot, granted. A lot of injuries there. So, but when Ohio State plays bad, it's usually away. They play
our home games are much better. That's the main thing I would be concerned about for you guys. Is like we play so much better at home.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of the big teams this year, like so Tennessee got upset when they were on the road, and then like our close games have been on the road generally. So like, just seems like for a lot of the upsets and a lot of the close games this year, just teams are not being able to go on the road and handle the crowds.
I think I was muted there. Yeah, I was going to say, let's wrap this up because we got a lot to talk about the next 5 days after this. I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be today's the first day, 6 days of game week. So I think that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. I love it. And I'm looking forward to it. Even though I'm not very optimistic about the outcome of the game, I think we should both enjoy this. Like we should all enjoy it.
And I also am going to look forward to all the people in the comments bashing you for having no confidence in your team.
Yeah, it's not. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll bet a lot of people after this last game against Illinois lost some confidence as well, because it was pretty obvious that Michigan's downfield passing game is broken. I mean, it's broke. So maybe they can fix it in a week, but what are the chances? Seriously, you can't fix something like that in a week. They would have fixed it last week if it was that easy. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. Well, getting closer. So we'll see. Hopefully we can get some, get our guys back healthy so we are close to 100% for the game. I want to see what that looks like.
Yep, exactly. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Looking forward to it.
Go Bucks.
Go Blue.